Hello and welcome to Feedback for the week of March 24th. I'm Adam SESSLER, joined by Patrick Klepek, ABBIE, HEPPE, and Matt KEIL. We're going to talk some God of War, as we promised we would. But first, there are other things to talk about. Nintendo decided to make a really big announcement in a really strange, small way today.
Well, we'll get to if this is strange or small, given if you look back at how they handled the original DS. But yeah, they announced the Nintendo 3DS and released almost no details about it, except that it's going to have 3D gaming capabilities. They'll unveil it at E3, and it'll be on sale before the end of March next year. And that's literally like all they've announced, except that this is coming several days before the DSi XL launches in North America.
Yes. It's like, yeah. It's like if James Cameron started talking about Avatar 2 the first week of December. It was a strange decision. Now,
he actually might have been doing that.
Yeah, so. You know what? That's quite possible. There was that point by the first week of December, I'm like, no more James Cameron. Yeah, anybody but him. Now, the 3D is not 3D as James Cameron has led us to believe it is, which is wearing silly glasses.
Right.
And then it pops out of the screen.
If you look back, I think collectively us kind of looked at Nintendo dismissing the concept of 3D because both Satoru Iwata, the president of Nintendo, and Shigeru Miyamoto, their lead designer, both said that I don't get 3D glasses. And that they were very specific. If you look back at their quotes, they both dismissed 3D glasses. And we all kind of took that as, well, that's how you experience 3D until they figure out a way for it to jump out at you. So Nintendo is sort of, they've done the motion thing, but they're sticking to, one plane of visual existence. And as it turns out, they seem to have found a way to satisfactory to them to do 3D that doesn't require glasses, which leads us to believe it is some sort of, I wouldn't call it a gimmick, but it's essentially trickery because...
Magic. Can we call it magic?
It's I mean, a lot of people use Nintendo in the sense of Disney and magical, and that I think they have found a way to get a sense of 3D without glasses, without that tech actually being there yet.
Well, I think they're using there was a demo on PC a year or so ago, or maybe more. It was like head tracking, where your camera watched where your eyeballs were, and then it projected two separate, basically put two different images up that each eyeball would see and then turn into 3D the way you normally see things. So with the two screens, that may be what this is doing.
And we've seen that there's that...
There's a camera right there.
Yeah, and there's that DSi demo, the one that kind of blew everyone's minds about a month ago, that was this DSiWare game out of Japan that used head tracking, and that's sort of how the camera moved and created a sense of 3D without 3D actually being there. And so, I mean, it seems like if they're releasing a new piece of hardware, there's certainly something a little more interesting about this than just head tracking, because they can do that with the DSi. But I mean, I think that's what remains to be seen, is what is that differentiating thing that seems to them think they need a new piece of hardware? Because this does seem like maybe not necessarily the DS2, but this is the Game Boy Color to the Game Boy. This is that's what we wanted to do, and then this is this but better, but not quite ditching the previous hardware.
Well, and I think this is also your sign of things to come, because I think all the next generation of consoles are going to be 3D. They're all going to be 3D. Start saving your money for the 3D TVs, people, because they're all going to be
the question is, is this really going to happen in the next generation of consoles? Are we going to see sort of a soft move into 3D, somehow maybe being incorporated with Natal, somehow finding its way onto the PS3? I mean, apparently this is the big thing.
Well, no, but see, the thing, that's what I sort of love about this announcement, is that they specifically call out that it won't require glasses, because they're calling out everyone else's approach to it, specifically Sony's, and saying, we're going 3D. You gotta buy that new TV, and you gotta get those expensive glasses, and your whole family's gotta get them, and all your friends have to have them. They're saying, we can do this, and you don't need glasses. I think even if it's a trick, even if it's not some technological breakthrough that we were kind of thinking it was required in terms of having something actual come out of the screen, they seem to have, or at least we're assuming they found a way to trick you into think they've done it. They've done that, and if they have, that's huge. That they're allowed to say 3D, and this is consumer level 3D. They're essentially taking the concept of 3D and making it understandable to a consumer.
And this is the very thing that made the Wii so successful.
Exactly.
They had something, they made it cheap, it got into people's homes really quickly. Now, on was it their own website that they had this kind of simulated demo of the tech?
I mean, everyone's kind of trying to figure out where it could be going, because there's the technology. If you look at the before the Wii was announced, all that tech was out there. So we kind of all missed that the first time around. So now what everyone's doing right now is trying to figure out, well, what tech did they pick up?
Where's that been?
But there was something we did see this morning on a website that kind of showed the 3D, but it was
Yeah, the
not.
demo
That was what
Right, that's what
Patrick
we've
was
been-
talking about.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the head tracking one, and so it gives. And so I mean, yeah, it's very possible that this is sort of an extension
But
of
it's
that.
starting to look like that the 3D is not coming off of the screen. It's
Yeah.
not.
It's
It's
like
not
it's
coming
going
to you.
into it.
Right. It's
Yeah.
almost like, oddly enough, the Virtual Boy, which tried to create those sort of planes of depth, and
Or I mean, Avatar's big strength was that they didn't, as James Cameron said on Attack of the Show, they're not bouncing crap off your forehead.
Yeah.
They're trying to give you a depth of field to go into. And
Now, I guess
seems
the
to
thing
work.
is, I'm trying to figure out. There was something else that was in the Nikkei where they said this is going to have a 3D joystick.
Nikkei, the Japanese newspaper, who has previously called pretty correctly the specifications for the DSi and the DSi XL. So they had an additional report this morning out of Japan. So we're assuming this is probably mostly on point, but it clearly could change. But they said that it would have a 3D joystick, which was their translation of their own interpretation. Most likely that's an analog stick. Like, maybe it could be something more than that, but that seems to be...
Well, more or less, it would have to be a stick that could go to the Z-axis.
Right.
Axis. Excuse
So
me, not
we're
axis.
sort of assuming 3D joystick means analog
Yeah.
stick, but it could, it's Nintendo, so it could be something else.
I guess the other
I
thing
seem to
is...
recall that was something similar to how they referred to the N64 joystick when that first
They said it was in
popping around.
it was in
Like
3D.
a 3D joystick. Yeah,
You know what? You might be right there.
I think that rings a bell. That rings
I mean,
an N64 bell for me. I don't know. I
the
might be
joystick
wrong.
did exist in the third dimension.
Yes, it
So,
did.
I mean, it was a very accurate
high.
description.
It was tall.
I guess what I'm sort of confounded on is what's the gameplay advantage that this offers up? I mean, Klonoa is the first thing that comes to mind because you could kind of go in. Are we looking at 2.5D type games? It seems... at least as challenging for me in terms of imagination as what could you do that wouldn't be kind of clunky or awkward to make this work?
I mean, if you think back to one of the things that people got really excited about during the 16 beta, was like parallax scrolling. Now, parallax scrolling is essentially just layers of sprites that are kind of behind you in the screen. And I think if you think about
Mario Kart would be an example.
Like if you think about layers of background behind you, like I can easily see how that could be incorporated into a Metroid or a Mario, a game where there are planes of existence behind you that you can somehow jump to, or say Mario, you jump on a certain block and that jumps you to the next plane, and then you use that to solve a puzzle that allows you to get forward in a different plane. I think there's a lot of I mean, the thing that when Nintendo announced the Vitality sensor last year, the reason I was sort of miffed by it was because Nintendo has shown that they're not going to announce something without software proving why it should exist. They announced Motion Plus, you get Wii Sports Resort, they have the Wii, you've got at first it was tech demos, but then you got Wii Sports. Like, they're clearly doing this just to sort of, hey guys, this is what we're doing. Like, they're doing this to literally with people. Like, this is Nintendo just saying,
And
Yeah.
potentially,
Also, hey, 2 words: Mario Kart.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
what, as soon as you brought that up, I was thinking, it's already in my head.
that's
the
your
3D
pack-in.
Mario.
Yeah,
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely, and that could be really, really cool. Now, let's just talk for a second about the fact, they didn't give any details, and they do it right on the eve of the DSi XL, which here, I have one here. It's big. And
It is extremely big.
Nikkei thinks that it would be slightly smaller than this,
Yeah,
so that they seem to be moving towards this. I like the screen so much more. This,
I love the
This
screen.
is for big boy hands, and it makes me happy. That's all I can say.
Those-
I have big boy hands.
Or old people.
Thank you for sharing.
Because when I see that, I think big print, large print
Yeah.
book.
You're right. This is instead of
Now you're
easy
making
eye,
Adam
it's
feel
easy.
bad.
It's easy hold. Easy hold gaming.
that should have been their tag.
But this potentially could undercut this kind of this launch of another iteration of the DS. I mean, is this hubris?
This is for this is for us to
Yeah,
talk about. This
yeah.
isn't. There'll probably be stories, in Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal saying Nintendo is preparing a successor to the DS, but this is for us. Like, again, this is to get the industry talking about what is Nintendo doing next. And when they make a proclamation that it's 3D without glasses, you've made everyone rethink what
Their
maybe they were going to
strategy is
do
gonna
with
We're all
3D.
freaking out, but my mom's like, "That's not going to make my poker game any better." So
Yeah.
No.
Because they,
No, it
I mean,
won't.
because
Look, the cards. There's so many on the table.
and I think this is interesting because I dug up just for we were recording the original press release for the DS from 2004, and it is almost, thematically, it is the exact same press release. It is Nintendo does new handheld. Here's our crazy feature we're not going to explain. Come see it at E3.
Now,
it is literally
interestingly
the exact
enough,
same
given
thing.
the state of Nintendo then, I remember with Matt, we were like, oh my God, what are they doing now?
Yeah.
But now that, with the success of the Wii and everything, it's kind of like, well, hold on. This could have some real implications. I want to read the comment from Karenis, because I think this is the one thing that I'm wondering about. Considering the game developers aren't currently working in 3D, does Nintendo anticipate that development for this new system is going to be problematic? It isn't as though we're talking about adjustments to an existing engine or something along those lines. I imagine entirely new code is going to be required. Do they think that developers are going to be able to pump out enough high-quality titles to draw attention to the system? Obviously, everyone likes to publish on the DS because there's so many DSs out there. But given what's happened with third parties in the Wii, I think this is a legitimate concern. I mean, it sounds like there have been some dev kits.
Yeah, I mean, there were rumors of new handheld dev kits just before GDC. So, it sounds like certain high-level developers with close relations with Nintendo do have access to this. So, it's gonna be like the Wii or any new sort of input device. Nintendo is gonna lead the way. They'll have like one or two things that show potential to be really interesting examples, but it's gonna take a while. And again, I think his question sort of lends to our traditional understanding of what 3D is, of something popping it out of the screen. Yeah. If this is sort of just depth, maybe it's not as complicated. Maybe there are software workarounds that it can sort of do, we see 3D solutions right now with regular 3D where you can do pseudo 3D to existing things without doing anything. I see no reason why Nintendo couldn't have maybe thought of that, and your existing games will already sort of do a bit of 3D, but if you want those real 3D games, you got to get the ones custom built.
I just wonder, because Nintendo always, if Nintendo's going to release new hardware for something, it's a game changer to them. Yeah. And so there must be something to this that we don't know about yet that is going to make
definitely,
utterly unlikely. I'm sure there's people made enough money on the DS that I'm sure they'll put a little extra money towards developing this on a side, because it's probably going to sell like
a
crazy
lot
to people.
But the way they're portraying this is, if it's not DS2, it is. But this is the successor. Like the DSi was the experiment because that let them have a digital storefront. That let them get a win in front of piracy, which has really, really hurt the DS in a lot of markets. And this seems like, okay, we've had our lessons with what we want to do with the DSi and DSi XL. If those are successes, but I don't think we've really gotten the impression that Nintendo was really concerned with the DSi failing. Like they should have just put it out there.
All of them, and I will probably get. I feel like I'm an Apple fan right now.
Yeah. Well, they're the closest equivalent in the video game space. I think they were never concerned if those were failures, because I think this was all leading to the 3DS, and this is their. Sure. Yeah, if you didn't buy any of those, you're going to want to buy this one. And it's still backwards compatible with everything, so if you don't want to jump, you don't have to. Your games are still going to work, but if you want to make the leap and you haven't, this is going to be the one where you're going to finally want to do it.
Unfortunately,
I hope they launch it with better colors than they launched the XL.
I do agree with Matt. I'm afraid that even though they're doing something unique and different, this is going to further force 3D gaming, and I'm going to poke my eye out when this becomes the standard, so I don't have to.
We could probably get you a game that has a figure that
you're
comes
probably
out of it.
Right.
But if they manage to do it differently, then maybe they're moving it away from. See, I have hope that they're moving it away from the one that we don't want, which is sort of this gimmicky glasses stuff. But if they find a way to sort of simplify it and it's just sort of an added effect, I think it could be really interesting. And I don't. Nintendo does gimmicks, but does them in a really compelling way, and I have
that they do.
And I think the worlds that they create in a lot of their games kind of seem like they would translate very naturally.
I play a 3D Mario Galaxy.
Sure.
No, that's the thing. I would. Is that you said there is a very particular game that is already was in mind when this technology was being developed, and so that's the one I think we're all going to be very excited to see. Well, thank you for the news, Patrick. But let's move on to our game of the week, which is the God of War 3. Yay.
Huzzah.
Yay.
Let's hear yay.
Yay.
I liked it a lot. I got to play it weeks ahead of all you guys. I was like, I need to talk to someone about it. So this is kind of my way of forcing people into a room. Matt, we'll start with you because you've been quite an enthusiast of the series since I remember you seeing it at E3 2 years before the game was coming out, and you're like, this is the Castlevania game I've always wanted.
Yeah, I did say that. And then Hideo Kojima said that when it came out, and I'm just like, that was vindication for me. But there's something about the way they take because I love Greek mythology growing up. I read all of it, and then something about the way they take this material and turn it into this badass, borderline juvenile, borderline tasteless, romp of
a very fine line.
Yeah, it's just they ride that line so hard, where I kind of feel like I'm 12 when I play this game, but I'm kind of okay with that.
But if you're 12, you wouldn't be old enough to play that game.
True,
ironically.
It's a weird immature maturity, I guess. And I mean, I played all 4 of them in the last month because I played the collection and I never played the PSP game, so I played that and like to build up to 3, and they're all awesome. I probably played like 45 hours of God of War in the last month, and I'd play a 4 right now if you put it in front of me.
I mean, I think that's the thing is that when I was reviewing the game, it wasn't as revelatory as some other stuff that I've seen. I think like Mass Effect 2 and Uncharted 2. But that's only because the foundation it was building from was so remarkably strong.
It got it right the first time.
Yeah, and that where it really succeeded was in subtle things. That the combat, they didn't change the combat. They just had those necessary refinements. I think the new tech allowed them. That is the most spot on.
I think those are the best games this gen. Like the best game we repeatedly the games we. I mean, I don't know on this show that we like so much. They're either like things that like show us things we've never done before, or they're utter refinements of things we loved in the first place.
Yeah.
Mario Galaxy would be another example of the latter to me, where you didn't really need to change Mario, but you just put him in these incredible situations that I've never done before, and it
He's
all
upside
felt
down.
fresh again. And it's the same thing with Kratos. Every time I wander into a new temple, every time I wander into a new huge boss battle, and I realize, I'm doing this now, and everything they have you do is interesting and to me felt different. I mean, I get the people that feels is repetitive and doesn't progress enough, but I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, you are really doing the same thing that you have done in all of the past games, even down to the killing the same enemies. But first of all, I'd never seen the same enemies look like they do in God of War. It's seriously, it's different. I mean, it's almost like fighting a new enemy. They look so different and so good. And the nice little tweaks to the combat and the new weapons in the game and everything, like being able to rip those guys out of the ground, it just has very, very nice tweaks to the combat that I really enjoy.
The chain grab is really cannot be overemphasized how much that changes it.
Which is interesting because there's so many people out there that are like, oh, it's just the same game. And it's like, no.
But I love that game.
I know. It is. It's kind of like if chocolate cake was good on Tuesday, then I would like chocolate cake on Friday if I liked cake. I don't. But
why even use that as an example?
Because I like saying chocolate cake. I like sweetbread. So if sweetbreads were good on Tuesday, then they're very tasty if you have them cooked correctly. Really, I highly recommend it. Abby, our friend Eric over at the Foundry.
Let's go back to chocolate cake.
Let's go back to chocolate cake.
I will have sweetbreads.
But Patrick, I mean, what was your take when you were playing God of War 3?
Oh, I mean, I the same sort of sentiment. I really, really enjoyed it. It was one of those things that, I mean, just I love the aesthetics of the God of War games. I love their takes on Greek mythology and the scale. I will say that I think they sort of crudely say blew their load in the beginning in terms of setting the stage for what you thought the whole game was in terms of the scale and sort of the epicness of the battles. And you do get things like that amazing opening throughout the game, and they'll surprise you. Like the Kronos battle is completely unexpected.
That was the most. That's where I really thought the pacing really excelled. Is that there is that kind of view. The first 2 games, like this is I know the God of War pacing, and they kind of violated it a lot. But the Kronos, I'm like, I'm gonna go walk across Hades for a while. Like, no, hold on, this just got different.
That was the most cringeworthy battle in the entire game for me.
Yeah,
you know why?
My jaw was. I mean, I mentioned in the review how much my jaw opened. It was during that first realizing what this level really was.
I'm like holding my fingernails while we're
just going, oh my! I pulled something off. That was horrific.
Yeah. and what I love about those sequences is that they, unlike any other game where usually they would pull back or they would show you sort of like the massive scale of the situation, they still let you control Kratos as that's happening. And now you're not really doing anything. You're just sort of scaling a wall or something. But just to know that you can see yourself moving the character as these massive actions are happening on screen. Every other developer would have made that a cutscene or would have taken the control away from you. And 9 times out of 10, they let you have some sort of control during those sequences.
And you know what? And it does make it that more awe-inspiring because at the very least, that sense of danger is there that you don't know what this interactivity might lead to, and you have to be mindful of the fact that you're on something much bigger than you can possibly imagine.
Yeah. And it also reminds me of for some reason, it reminds me of how the magician will show you the sleeve or something. It's like this. It's this feeling of like we're not faking it. We're doing this.
Yeah, we're doing this. That's a really good analogy. The one thing I had wondered, because so much was made of that opening sequence, and I was like, whoa, my gosh, this opening sequence. I was glad that it went from 11 back down to 9 for a bit, and I was wondering how much people out there were going to think like, oh, that's how the whole game was supposed to be, and I think it would have been exhausting, and it does limit the traditional gameplay we expect out of God of War. Like when you're on a Titan, your space has been restricted quite significantly because you can only move on certain parts of the Titan, and that I was glad to know that they had a fairly good ebb and flow. I could have done with one more Titan.
See that's it, and I don't want to get too much into spoiler territory. People haven't finished it, but I feel like the end of the game could have used another one of those moments. And you got one in the beginning, you got one in the middle, and the end didn't quite have that for me.
Matt and I were talking to them. I mean, because very if you played any God of War, you know that at some point you're going to fight Zeus.
Yeah,
and I don't think it's a spoiler to say that is at the end of the
game. That's the whole
we
point
gave
of the game.
the kids a week. It's a good game.
Right.
If you have it, you should be done with it by now. It's
Fair
that
enough.
good. You played it in one sitting.
Yeah, that I did. And Sunday. When we were talking about if you're supposed to be equally matched with it, like how do you have that same moment that you have in the beginning at the very end when you're supposed to be as powerful as one of the gods? I mean, it needs to be an even fight. How do you do that?
It did paint him into a corner because you're not fighting. Yeah, you are as strong as Zeus, and so I do think. I think a comment was made that there were even larger plans for the conclusion of the game, whether that was in the narrative or in the boss battle. But it is. This is always an issue with almost every single game out there.
And bosses typically suck in every game, and I find that across the board. Because they paint yourself into a corner where you can't live up to what you built up to, and I think that's no different. One thing I did want to really compliment them for was I typically hate sort of the quick time sequences in almost any game because you're so focused on the buttons that you're distracted from the cool shit that you're doing on the screen.
Genius.
And to map the buttons to the places on the controller so that your eye, you don't have to look at what the button is. You just know if it's at the top, you're hitting triangle.
Yep.
Right.
Like I loved that because you're still sort of distracted, but at the same time, eventually you can get the timing down that you can pay attention to the gory stuff you're doing on screen and enjoy it.
Yeah.
You didn't even need
them
them to put like an X on one of those buttons.
No, you just needed that. There was like a flashing signal, and
great.
that was brilliant. And I would love to see. I liked Heavy Rain's approach of it's contextual to what you're doing. But for a game like this, where I think it really worked to just have them map to the corners.
I'm not a huge fan of the QuickTime sequence, I think, in modern games because I think that don't show me something that you couldn't do in traditional gameplay. But in God of War 3, it is because it tends to be more of a sense of a finisher. It's like I've earned this. This is not kind of denying me. Also,
that's your fatality.
They at least showed me something that I don't think is in any way conceivable to program as like something I can just do with regular
That one drives me nuts
game.
though when you have to take the analog stick.
Oh, I hate those.
It drives me insane. I don't think I hit. I think except for the final one, I don't think I hit one.
I never did it with the Centaur. I think once in the game.
Yeah.
It's just it's not something that happens frequently enough that I'm conditioned to want to do it. And in addition, my thumb just isn't always in that beginning spot.
No, and it starts up. Sometimes it starts up. Sometimes it starts down. The hardest fight in the game for me was Hermes.
Yeah,
because you had to do it repeatedly.
Yeah. That was, but man, did that have a satisfying conclusion to it. Actually, let's get to that aspect because I commented this and I couldn't tell all of you what was in the game, but this is so violent.
Yeah.
And I don't think in a bad, disgusting way, but
my mother would disagree with you.
Good Lord.
This game started to get the sequence with Hercules where
that's the one that's going to stand
him.
out to everyone.
I just at a certain or if you'll notice, we're gonna spoil everything, but with Zeus at the end of the game, they don't stop you from punching him at the very end of the game. You can go ad infinitum.
I was kind of wondering when that would end. I realized I've been doing it for like 10 minutes, and I thought maybe I would get something if I kept doing it.
And I couldn't tell if that was like a commentary on me as a player, like you can keep punching if you
no,
want.
it is sort of commentary on the fact that Kratos had been waiting to do this, and that it's...
I don't know. Like I have no problem with the over the top violence. I think it's really fun, but there were times where I was just like, come on, guys! Like you're just pushing it in for me. It's not that it was too violent. It was just it's not funny, or it was just you're just doing that to do that.
Well, I thought it amazing.
Like Hercules,
yeah.
I thought Hercules was awesome because it's an irreversible reference.
Yes. So for all the kids out there, I'm blanking on the director's name. There's a movie called Irreversible. It is one of the most unpleasant, though a very good movie. I'm not recommending it, so don't get me in trouble with your parents.
Yeah,
but yes,
that's what it's
inspired
a
from a
movie,
to,
and it's astounding that that's in a game.
And you don't scream like you do in God of War when you see it in the movie.
Yeah, I like it too because I mean, as much as a lot of Greek mythology is pleasant, and most of it is it's like Grimm's fairy tales, where you find out when you're an adult they didn't try to shove her foot into the shoe. They just
a lot of Greek mythology is like Zeus showing up and raping someone
women,
to get a kid.
A lot of it is really gnarly, but that actually, well, I mean, on that point, what I really liked about this one is I think it really tied together and also pointed out how strongly accurate within Greek mythology a lot of it was. I mean, Hercules was a son of Zeus through another wife, and Kratos easily
they
could
found
have
enough
been
ties
the
that
son
it
of
made
many
sense.
women that he slept with. And Hephaestus was
around.
married to Aphrodite, who didn't like him, who did like their mythology was pretty spot on. I'm a huge mythology buff too, so it's really cool.
I mean, Kratos is the only really invented thing in that
more
universe.
accurate than Clash of the Titans.
I mean, Hephaestus created Pandora. She wasn't a daughter of Aphrodite. He actually just kind of made her. He built robots. He was really awesome. They didn't have a word for robot, but he built robots for Zeus.
What was the Greek word?
Let's
find that out for the next.
It was like, I don't know if they had a word for it.
I don't know, but he had like one that like watched over Crete that would attack like passing ships, and he had two that helped him because Zeus at one point did beat the crap out of him and like break his legs and do all this horrible stuff to him too. So he had helper robots. Like Greek mythology is awesome.
It AI help.
Somewhere Bullfinch is going, yay.
They line up at the top at the beginning like X-Men, basically. And it's like, it's not too far off.
No, really
at the very end of the game, I mean, the Greeks have their own flood myth, the same as you would in the Bible or pretty much any other major religion. And that's, like, to me, that was kind of like, the Deucalion, because it's going to end well in a way because there's the Deucalion and Para myth, and I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. But then it's the Noah and the Ark, and they scatter the bones and start up human life again. And so I guess if you know Greek mythology really well, the ending is kind of also like, oh, well, life goes on.
Yeah, can you be? No, it's not derivative. That's ridiculous.
Maybe. I mean, all the timing is, but it's
so,
cool.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the combat, but I want to use Snake 3169 because 3167, he's a douche. But 3169, I like this guy. Just finished the game, got it yesterday, but I find the combat was awesome. The way you could use every item you had, every weapon you had, and incorporate it into a combo was just so much fun to really play with. I would use the boots to smash in enemies, which in turn send them flying in slow motion, then rage grab them to pull myself up in the air to them, then grab them again. The combat, far and away, is the most fluid ever. That's the thing. They've tried to incorporate new weapons into previous God of Wars, and it's like, no, those blades are too fun. They're too useful, and you never really play with the other ones. Here, I think, for me...
The exception of the Cestus, they're pretty similar to...
Yeah, but even the Cestus, they all reach out. Yeah. They kind of realize we can have them behave slightly differently, but they need to pretty much have the fundamentals.
Yeah, well, the balance is great in 3 because... one of the problems you have with the short-range weapons in the previous games is there's no reason to use a weapon, no matter how powerful it is. Like the Blade of Athena is not as useful as the Blades of Chaos because the Blades of Chaos can hit somebody 30 feet away.
Yeah.
Like you can do easily enough damage to them to make up for the weaker blades by the time they get to you.
Right.
What they did in this one is they have ranged weapons except for the Cestus, and the Cestus interrupts almost anything.
Yeah.
But the Cestus does have range. I mean, that's that great one.
Range, but
it's like mid-range.
The key to why the Cestus is satisfying and useful and interesting in a game that uses ranged bladed weapons is you don't feel weaker. Like you're not going to get your ass kicked because that Cyclops will just close in on you because you have such a little range. 2 hits from that thing will stagger him.
Yeah.
And so that's why they remain useful. Is like they're not afraid to make them powerful enough to matter.
And they encourage you to use it right off the bat by throwing in the enemies with the shields, and like you just get it. I was using the electrified ones all the time. The only thing I didn't really use as much was the Hades.
Didn't use the Hades. I couldn't really figure out how that worked early on, and then by the time I kind of had the hang of them, I got the Cestus, and I was just like, well.
Yeah, the Cestus is just fun. Also, the magic for the Hades blades was the one I was most disappointed with because I want to kill them all. I didn't want to summon something.
Yeah, I thought that.
But as you progress in the summons, there's some cool.
They do get pretty badass. But I thought that that's a really tough line for them to walk because by making them more similar, you sort of dilute the uniqueness of them. So I did find that while I was encouraged to change between them, there wasn't necessarily still a whole lot of reason to do it. Like you either had your 2 big fists, which you always wanted to go to for certain situations, or it was just whichever blade you felt like at the time, which I think is cool because
I spent a lot of the game with the Cestus, which I don't think I would have ever thought I would have
And I
spent
think
time away from the blades.
And I think they were okay with that. Like, we were going to sacrifice uniqueness for a little more variety and getting players to actually do it. And I did like that they better balanced that you pretty much upgraded, as long as you were paying attention, everything to near maximum by the end.
Yes.
Like, all of your items, all of your weapons, if you were paying attention, searching, you got pretty much all but, like, 1 or 2 to maximum status. And I really enjoyed that because it didn't force you to... Even if you liked a weapon, you would eventually max that out and have to spend your points somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then, okay, well, now I've got that powered up. Maybe I'll play along with that.
Yeah,
so I think they were very smart about finding ways to encourage you to do that. And
they were also much better about like the hidden stuff, and I think this might tie in with like what you said about starting at 11 and kind of driving you through it. Like you only need 3 of each item to power up the things instead of 5. You, I mean, there are very few like break down the wall and go off in this side area thing. They're mostly hidden out in open space, or once you get Helios's head, you just reveal them and there they are.
Which I also like.
Once you realize what their definition of gold dust is, because they're like, look for the shine. Now, dust to me is dusty, and there's a lot of dust everywhere. So I was obsessing right after I got the Helios head. Then I realized, no, the stuff that looks like it's a gas vent is where you want to start to point Helios's head. It's a nomenclature issue. Also, Monticello 19. He's responding to the one complaint I really had about the game, which was that puzzle, and I want to use this to talk about all the other awesome puzzles that are in the game. A little late, but the inappropriate puzzle Adam talks about I thought was pretty clever. All the symbols on the PS3 controller are ancient Greek letters: circle, triangle, and square. In the game, you see they didn't have the bottom line of the square correct, signifying pi. Anyway, that together with the fact that it was the muses having you play the song to pass made a pretty fitting puzzle to me, though rather easy. If you didn't make the connection to the Greek alphabet, I could see how it would stick out. Monticello 19, you're clever. I caught that. It wasn't that. It was still jarring and just broke the illusion of the game.
We got the letters. It was the color.
The colors are what did it.
Yeah,
I didn't mind it. That was really.
Am I
quick and
crazy thinking
easy,
that
painless
R1
puzzle.
and L1 were also incorporated?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Just the face ones. I think, it was just the fact that, it just broke the illusion a little bit. It wasn't so much that it was a detriment. It was an easy puzzle. You were done with it. And it just felt...
It was
why
easy.
Why would they choose to do that?
It's the colors. It's absolutely the colors to me because, I mean, you get the Greek letter thing, but when I walk in and see the pink and the red and the green and the blue, I'm like, well, I mean, that's the PlayStation symbol. I mean, it's like...
That used to be one of their main marketing things.
It's
was
like I
those
walked into the
symbols.
Sony store.
So I started thinking of like ads that featured those things. And I'm like, that's not what I want to think about during the game.
You felt the intrusion of the system trying to sell itself almost inside of the game. And yes, especially in something as sort of as sanctified as God of War 3, which should be a system seller where the system's more available out there right now. But with that, the rest of the puzzles in the game were exceptional because I always thought that was the weakest part of the previous 2 games because why the gods need me to push a block so I can kill them is always something that kind of got in the way, and they tended to be cruel to the point of just abusive. The one
there's nothing like that pushing all the little pieces to form the wall in the first game, and one of them you don't need, and one of them is off camera, and you're like, oh, guys.
Actually, that's one thing. They did not use the fixed camera angle as kind of a ploy to hide things from you, which I always found that kind of cheap. It's like giving someone a toy and then making the rules.
I did have trouble with the first puzzle in 3 in this, like where you have to lower the chandelier and get the guy and get the
burn the
mainly
guy.
because I'd just been through that whole the Mount Olympus battle, and it was like trying to force my mind to do math after like coming back in from recess. It was like. I've been running around in circles doing like awesome stuff, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, you want me to figure out what you want me to do with the fire?
Yeah, I kept jumping off
and the
because,
dog and the thing.
Yeah, every time he complained, I'd like hop off. I'd be like, oh, sorry, dude, I'm burning you. And then I remembered that I was like Kratos. The I'm an and I realized I didn't care.
The notes that you were finding when you're in Hades, especially yet again from the sea captain at the beginning of God of War 1.
One of the best running gag in the series. Like, this poor man, just wrong place, wrong time.
But like the puzzle around the time of Hera, when you get her, I can't remember what the
green
jewel
puzzle, the one that plays with perspective.
Yeah,
that was by far my favorite puzzle in the game.
Really cool. There was also the fact is a lot of the puzzles in the game were overt puzzles. It was like the god said, "Make me a puzzle so I can make man feel stupid," rather than like the idea from the previous games where this inadvertently was puzzling.
Or it was tied into the plot. Like, it seems like they sort of found ways to organically, okay, this would be a part where they'd want to test man or test Kratos, or just the entire concept of the labyrinth. was really cool.
Well, bringing Daedalus into it and making him kind of a core figure, especially towards the end, and like knowing that he, had constructed the original, the labyrinth that's written about in Greek mythology, and then, the fact that he would have had so much hand in like the construction of that made it all make sense. I mean,
it's just so cool because when you start the game, this is also, I think, one of the best tricks I've seen in a game, that you see the entire game landscape as you're flying up, and very close to the beginning of the game, and I was like, "What are all these big boxes?" I'm like, "Wait, I don't boxes? You've got to be kidding me!" And I'm like, "What are those?" And then it's only later that all those things that you see as you're traveling up through Mount Olympus become more clear. And yes, that's the labyrinth. And I thought I was getting a maze. And I got something far more clever.
I love that they referenced twice that one shot where Kratos is climbing the big chain down from Hades up to the top of Mount Olympus, and they sort of pull out, and you realize that was that point you started the game. Like, there's a save point right there, and they just like pull back to reference that 2 different times. I thought it was just a really cool way of always reinforcing the perspective of this is where you were at the beginning, this is where you are compared to that, to try and give you a sense of where you are in the game world.
I think it also gives like the hand of all the developers, like that they were very much in command in designing this. They had a clear idea and they executed on it. And I think little moments like that really, really translate that.
Well, it just has such a nice way, the whole game, of kind of folding in on itself. Like, if you actually look at the game space, I don't know how big it really is. I mean, you're kind of circling back through.
And you do some backtracking, but it's clever backtracking.
It didn't feel weird when I was backtracking. I was always looking for something new or doing something new and almost forgetting that I had really been there before. I mean, I actually saw stuff on the way and knew I was going to have to come back to that. And I actually because I told you, I got confused and got off track. And I'm like, I've been sitting here next to this blue thing for like an hour. What the hell am I supposed to do with it? Because I didn't realize that the game was going to kind of fold back on itself as much.
I think when you first saw the game, like a year ago or something, they told you that one of the and they must have been referring to Kronos, like the Titan was about the size of a level in 2.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and also in the very beginning
of
the game,
I'm not calling the game small. Right. I'm saying that it's
but see, get
in a
that
weird
sense
way.
that in the entire game space, there's an entire level that's kind of slapped on.
But they just know that, like, you've got the scale and the scope, but to make that work in someone's head, you also need the perspective.
Yeah.
And they give that to you repeatedly to kind of get, and also just like how many, it's almost like Wile E. Coyote-ish in terms of how often you have to keep climbing back and passing the same
They
point.
just keep knocking him down over and over again.
Climbing back up again. I'm going to get that god. Our question of the week is also about God of War 3, and it's about something that we have not yet addressed. From Warden 626, I'm probably going to have to paraphrase because this is very long. After reading through a number of reviews and forums, it seems to me that not many people are satisfied with the conclusion of the God of War trilogy. I find this point to be rather distressing because it suggests that some gamers, the ones who clamor for new and unique experiences, end up being the same ones that rant and rave when a character they have come to know takes an unexpected dramatic turn. I love the fact that Santa Monica Studios was willing to show that Kratos was more than a rage-fueled brute. It makes me wonder if more studios are willing to take flagship characters and use them in unexpected and revealing ways. Do you believe this is the same kind of thought that is going into projects like Metroid Other M? No. With the rise of story-driven, emotionally engaging titles from the likes of BioWare and Quantic Dream, I believe that there's a chance of seeing classic game characters for more than what so many expect them to be. There's a lot of interesting points here. Let's first talk about the conclusion. And once again, spoiler alert.
Yeah, we'll mention it in the post.
It does... They try to find some decency inside of Kratos. They do play on the fact that his family was killed. And at the end... sort of the resolution of what's in Pandora's box, what is going to overcome the gods, is not material. It is, this sense of hope. Because
have you read Greek myths and you know what it is? I mean,
I guess for me,
spoiler. It was spoiled years ago.
For me,
before the game was made.
The unsatisfying part of the ending was not so much Kratos' turn. I thought it was very cool that they made a deliberate attempt to slow the game down to a snail-like pace to kind of bring it back around to the first game and his family and have you sort of encounter those different moral moments that he had in 1 and 2. I thought that was cool, and that was a bold choice to, like, for a game that is always so forward-heavy, to sort of slow it down. Like, I just had a problem with the Athena character, because I never felt that she was particularly fleshed out. I didn't really know why I was really doing anything for her, and I realized at the end of the game they were just setting up, well, no matter what Kratos does, no matter how many people he overcomes, someone else is going to want to take that power and abuse it, and I just didn't... It just felt arbitrary when maybe they could have used a character they already had or something, but I just thought Athena could have been fleshed out a little bit more to better explain what her role was. And that was that was my part that was disappointing. The other, Kratos himself, I thought that was an interesting turn.
Well,
I mean,
Athena's the goddess of wisdom, so technically her job is to know more than
Then all
Kratos.
of us.
Yeah.
or anyone. I mean, I mean, that's kind of a cheap narrative ploy in the sense of like, well, she knows better.
Yeah.
Bye. You know, it's like, but
Well,
like,
and they say that like in the beginning of the game, she's like, "Well, I've gone on to a
ascended to a
higher
higher
plane of existence." And if I could have just gotten some sense of maybe what that was,
It's
maybe
funny
I
because
would've-
that is in Norse mythology. That there, who is it that Loki kills with the hemlock? The beautiful man begins
is that
with
Balder?
I think maybe it was Balder. And so, when Odin is sending him off, he mentions that there is actually like another heaven above Asgard. So that was one thing that I was thinking when I was playing it.
And
I do see what you're saying,
I
though.
put that together. Like I see, they're saying there's another plan. There's a whole other probably war to this that we're not. But if we just gotten maybe a hint of that I think that would have put a little more perspective. That there were gods upon gods looking for that or something like that.
Matt and I want to take it to Egypt.
Well,
Yeah, I'm cool with
one
that.
of the
Egypt
things,
next.
One of the things, though, that because I have seen a lot of people complaining about the end, and I kind of predicted that was going to be happening when I was writing the review. I think if they went as nihilistic as I think people wanted it to go, that's just cheap and easy.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and you know, I said this about the original Assassin's Creed, that one of the things I really so liked is that, so many twists that happen in gaming stories are just to say, like, oh, look, everyone's a liar. Let's kill them all. That, something that actually has a little bit more substance and isn't going to sort of cheap, college sophomore Camus reading, just like, I hate everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That I thought it was brave, it was bold, and I think on the whole it worked and it was necessary.
Well, one of the more compelling things about Assassin's Creed story, I think, is that your heroes in that game, even when it's revealed that everything you believe is false, their conviction is that the only moral thing to do is the belief that it still does matter because we're all people.
Yeah.
It's a very humanist viewpoint.
Yeah.
And I don't know. My question about the end of God of War 3 is like, and I don't know how many of you finished Chains of Olympus.
That's the one I haven't.
I have not.
I'm curious.
I have.
If you haven't played Chains of Olympus, do you feel that Kratos earned his emotional turn at the end of 3? Because that's the
interesting.
only place in the rest of the series where he shows any kind of human quality towards his daughter in Elysium at the end. He gives up all his power at the end of Chains of Olympus to be with his daughter in Elysium, and then when he finds out Persephone tricked him and is going to destroy basically destroy reality with Atlas, including Elysium, which includes his daughter, he gives up ever seeing his daughter again, gets all his power back by snapping the necks of souls in Elysium, which is probably not what they were expecting.
There's a lot of tie-in from Chains.
Yeah, there's a
into
lot of
3.
reference to Chains. I mean, you
if
say
you haven't
Helios.
played it, you're missing that.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm going to have to go do that.
Atlas.
Yeah,
I mean,
they tried to, I think, with that ending sequence where they slowed it down, trying to bring it back. But I don't think. No, because I've seen one of the constant complaints I've seen from a lot of people talking about 3 is that Kratos is kind of a dick. Like he doesn't really earn. Like he shows no humanist qualities throughout 3. He just is pure rage. Like people that he didn't necessarily have to kill, he just kills because why not? And so I can see why people don't get the sense that he earned
Chains
it.
of Olympus helps him earn that. I don't know if it fully pulls it off. I do think that one place people are a little more down on Kratos than they should be is a lot of people are saying like they don't buy him as someone who would even think that much about what's going on, and I don't buy that because if you play through, I just played all of them, so I'm kind of like got it all fresh in my mind. He's not stupid.
Yeah.
Like Kratos is not a big dumb brute.
He's not rage embodied.
He's smart. He's a tactician. He was a strategist. He was a general. And when he talks, even when he talks to Athena at the beginning of 3, he talks like what he speaks well. Like he's like
very
be
slow
quick
and
with
measured.
be quick with your word. I mean, he's speaking in the language of basically the aristocracy. I mean, he's not a dumb guy. He just doesn't care anymore, and that's a distinction.
That's the sense. With the loss of the family, he just, he is, in essence, sort of nihilistic because he doesn't have anything to live for. But I think that he started to realize the cause of those actions.
Yeah, if I had maybe a little more foreknowledge of that, that might have made how he
it
handles
has nice
3 a
tie-ins.
lot more.
It
Because
doesn't
then
invalidate what you think about it because
Sure.
you shouldn't really be expected to play the PSP spin-off to really get. I mean, it's a cool direction to go with the character, but it's kind of like didn't do your homework, you're not going to get it. That's a little.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, and like that homework was the extra credit because the idea that the PSP game has that real big turning point, and I didn't even realize that.
Yeah,
I
like that they incorporated that,
Yeah.
but I don't blame people who have a problem with it. I guess I'd say.
Well, just quick comments. I do think it's interesting. Let's not discuss Metroid Other M because I do not think that what this
want
gentleman
Abby to
Warden
lose it.
628 is saying. But It is
Spoilers,
interesting that
Amos is a
the
chick.
idea of taking large characters and not having to be so reverential to what people want that character to do and to take them to interesting places. I mean, I don't see where that's going to happen anytime soon because it's a very, very challenging and risky maneuver from a
There
developer.
aren't a whole lot of characters that could do that too.
They're developed.
Like, you're not
you
going to
don't
see a photo real Mario game anytime soon.
Or Link's
where you
not-
have
I
the
don't think
plumbing.
you want to.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why
It
people
just
were.
sounds pornographic.
There was actually a porn.
Well, yeah. Well, I just
Ron
although I do
Jeremy.
like the idea of a photorealistic Brooklyn plumbing simulator with just this bleak, horrible life that Mario leads, and at the end you get sucked into the Mushroom Kingdom, and that's wonderful.
Well, I mean, and there's again, like, there's so many few characters, but I think that's why I remember specifically in Wind Waker, people were pretty shocked when Link shoved the sword through Ganon's head at the end, because that was uncharacteristic of Link to be that violent. And I think that's like a very minor version of what
You
we're
don't
talking
need.
about.
You don't actually need to do something so tremendous to really get people agitated.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like these characters that all of us have either grown up with and known for so many years. I mean, it can really be something small, and people pick
like
up
that,
on it.
like
They're
that, like that's
I
nothing.
can't
That's not
believe, you
horrifically
know.
violent, but still people kind of
Yeah.
freaked out. And what I loved about the way God of War 3 did it was that they still made you hold L2 and R2 to sort of charge up him doing the pull, and you're like, oh, I'm hitting Athena, I'm taking her down, and then you stab yourself instead, because they've set up the expectation every time you do that in the game, you've killed someone else, and then they sort of trick you. And I thought that was sort of a brilliant way of thinking, oh, I've got
See,
it.
that was a spoiler I wouldn't have given away.
Yeah, we'll just put a thing on the top of it.
Yeah.
So, no, but
That's the one.
That
That's
was the one, I think.
And let's be honest, it's never stopped him before.
No.
yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of stopping, unfortunately, that is what we have to do now. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Patrick, for this wonderful discussion about God of War 3 and the Nintendo 3DS, which I still think is the harbinger of Doom. If Doom comes next week, we will talk about it on feedback. Hopefully, we'll have something game-related to
It'll be
discuss as
coming at
well.
Wait, should we mention PAX? Because we're going to be there.
Yes,
yeah.
thank you.
PAX.
We're going to be at PAX
Do-do-do.
this week, starting on Friday, but we are going to have a panel Sunday at 1 p.m.
In the Manticore
In the-
Ballroom
in the
Theater.
Manticore
Ballroom.
Theater.
Yes.
You should come. It will be entertaining. We will all be there. We will entertain you.
I have so many stories.
I have
Yes.
I have another panel too on Friday
that's
at
right.
2
Yes.
o'clock.
Friday at 2 o'clock. It's-
Chris Kohler from Wired, John Drake from Harmonix, and someone to be determined from Irrational Games are going to be journalists versus developers. We're first panel opening PAX East, so
Someone
should
to
be-
be
it should be
determined.
very
is
if
a
you don't
really
want to be
funny
part,
guy,
if you don't want
by the way.
to be part of the nerd rampage going in, you can come see us.
And you have yours with Hal Halpin.
Yes, I was about to say on 7 p.m. on Saturday, I am doing a talk with Hal Halpin. If you have heard about the one that I did with him at PAX West last year, I highly recommend you come because I'll have none of these nice people to make me say nice things.
We don't make you say nice things.
Yeah.
I definitely
We
went into some
encourage you to
interesting.
say bad
I'm going to
things.
talk
I
about
wanted some
sweet bread
interesting-
for 45 minutes.
Don't miss
Hey.
this one, is what he's saying.
I say don't miss. It'll be a lot of fun. And at 7 p.m. with me jet lagged, ooh, it's going to be funny. Anyway, so PAX, come if you're on the East Coast. Come if you're on the West Coast. I don't care. We will be back here next week for feedback. We'll talk about more games. Take care until then. Yay.